Welcome back, wannabes and creators, to another episode of The Business of Art, the podcast that demystifies business for artists. And today on the program, we have Martin Dunn. Martin Dunn is a staple of the Florida convention scene. He's an artist, writer, and letterer. He's worked for IDW, Dark Horse, Hashtag Comics, and DC. He owns CAE Studios and has put out a lot of indie comics, including, but not limited to, Joshua Black. And more importantly, this is another crossover show. You may remember our crossover show with Tyler James from Comics Launch. This one's a little bit different. This one is just kind of a freewheeling roundtable discussion like you would find at a convention about all the things that it takes to make comics. In fact, Martin's show is I Make Comics. If you're coming from Martin's show, I'm Russell Nolte, the creator of Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter, Katrina Hates Dead Shit, publisher of Wannabe Press, and host of The Business of Art. So this has a much more con feel, like a panel feel to it, than a standard interview. 1, 2, 1, 2. I ask a question, he answers one. I really like this format. It reminded me of a really good artist spotlight panel, but two artists talking back and forth to each other. Before we get on with the show, I want to remind you that I have a commercial-free version of my show available at thebusinessofart.us/volume1. That's every hard lesson, every ranterlude, every Kickstarter mini-season from our first 100 episodes. It's not the interviews, but it is everything else. That's 74 episodes, almost 9 hours of content, from everything ranging from how to pitch your story to how to sell better at conventions. I even give my own revenue numbers from San Diego Comic-Con. And you can get it right now at thebusinessofart.us/volume1 for just $20. That's 9 hours of commercial-free content for just $20. So head on over to thebusinessofart.us/volume1 today and check it out. And if you're new to the show, if you're coming from Martin's show, head on over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe this episode today. With that being said, let's get on with the show. Come on, Martin. Let's talk about making comics.
I started the I Make Comics website. We're very new with this website, but me teaching people the art of making comics and the skills it needs. And I don't just. It was funny. I had a conversation with Javier Lugo yesterday about this. He was talking about my methods and stuff are the most. I guess you could say broad. I wouldn't say I have the most in-depth stuff that I'm putting together. Now, no one has seen half the stuff. I've got 2 episodes up, and we've been building the website, but the content has been there forever of just my Facebook page, my regular website, things like that, and I'm compiling it all on this website because and it sounds funny, but I'm busy, and I'm also so big on helping newcomers and guys that I like and care about, understand the industry and trying to get in and trying to make the right decisions and don't make all of the bad mistakes that I make as well. It's kind of like that mentality. But my biggest reason was when I first broke in, no one wanted to help me. It felt like I couldn't find anyone that would give me legitimate answers. It was always the runaround. And so I have this like weird inability to tell people I'm busy. And so someone will hit me up and they'll be like, oh, hey, will you look at my thing? Or will you read this? And I will 9 out of 10 times I'll do it. And then I've lost an hour and a half of my life for doing so. And, of work time. And I'm also, it's pretty well documented that I'm a single father, things like that. So it's very, trying on my time, and I don't sleep much as it is. So it's one of those things of like, I'd like to sleep a little bit more. So it was like, I'm going to give people a one-stop place to go to get all this information that I myself have compiled in all these years and not have to sit there on Facebook. I can just send them a link. And I've done this now this week with just a few things, and it's been so amazing.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, that's one of the things. I just did this big Kickstarter toolkit that you can get on our site. And it's just because I got sick of people asking me about Kickstarter. I was like, hey, man, here's the deal. Here's the link. It has literally every blog post, every podcast, and my course on it. If you go through that and you still have pointed questions, I am happy to answer it. But I have now answered the same Kickstarter question, I feel like hundreds upon hundreds of times.
Well, what I've found is, and I run into this all the time, one of the things I always do with panels is I always tell people I've become sort of the official panel host for like so many different Southeast based conventions. They always hit me up to do these panels, and my panels I've gotten more and more popular, and like other pros and guys that like are legends to me are now like have approached me to be on them. This past MegaCon Tampa, I had Mike Perkins, Bob McLeod, Pat Broderick. We had Liam Sharp. We just had this huge amount of amazing guys that like I'm a huge fan of as well. And they were all in these panels, and I still feel like insanely like humbled, I guess. I don't know. Like it's it's very interesting to hear these guys be like, you really know what you're talking about. But I start off every panel because my approach to this is, I don't know how you are. Tyler and I have had this conversation where Tyler is like the nice teacher who's like, hey, you can do it, keep it up. And I'm that gym coach screaming at you to either climb the rope or get out of my room. And like, I start every panel off with a very, very straightforward thing of like, one, I don't think everyone's made out to do this. Two, if you can't find the information on Google, you're not looking hard enough. And three, the best way to break into comics is make comics. And I usually answer those three questions immediately without even asking, because even after saying those things, I get asked at least once in that panel, someone will still ask me one of those questions. And I get, like you were saying, I get asked the same question over and over and over. And it is the most frustrating thing. And people don't realize it, where you're like, you want to be polite and you want to be helpful, but at the same time, you're like, did you even think to Google it? Like, did you even think maybe?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't necessarily mind when they ask me the same question over and over, and it's because sometimes the answers vary from one month to another. I mean, there are times where I've answered a question differently in 1 month, and I've had to go and change a whole bunch of stuff because either something changed online or something happened that I found out about
Right.
that was wrong. And so there are times where it is important for me to answer that question and then go back and fix whatever blog post that I had up there that was wrong in the first place. But it's certainly nice to have a website where you could point someone to and say, hey, you want to hear about pitching? I did a podcast episode where I literally went step by step on how I do a pitch. So if you want to know how to pitch, just go to thebusinessofart.us/pitch. I think it's pitch,
Right.
or pitching, and talk about it. Like, we can talk about it now, but like, this information is not going to be as good now as it is on my site because I spent 2 days putting that together, and now I've just been at a con for 6 hours, and the information in my brain is not as fresh as when I did it perfectly on my site.
Right. See, and I feel like I always get the brand new people. That's who I get. I don't get guys. I mean, I have a couple guys that come to me for advice on things like, like that will come and ask me certain questions like pitching or things like that. But and by the way, I will put this out there, don't ask me for pitching advice. I'm still trying to wrap my head around pitching. But the entire concept of breaking in, everyone keeps coming to me with that. And it's one of those things of that answer is never going to change. How do I break into comics? We'll make comics. And I know it sounds vague and rude, but it's not meant to be. It's just saying, like, if you wanted to do this, you would figure this out. Like, I figured it out. Right. I didn't have anyone hold my hand. I was like, all right, well, no one wants to help me, so I guess it's time to start Googling things.
You know what kind of sucks about being on the other side of this extinction point? So there's sort of this. So I have this theory that there's an extinction point of all people of comic creators,
right?
And the reason that once you pass that extinction point, you sort of, you're going to be in it for the long haul, basically.
Right.
That extinction point is like, it's really people that are either not talented enough, not qualified enough, or don't want to do the work enough to do the job. But like once you pass that point, you're sort of in it forever.
Right.
So I forgot where I was going to go with that. I had a whole thing. Oh, so when people come to me, they're usually past that point or close to that point because my panels are very specific. Like I will do a panel as specific as how to develop your pitch for exhibiting at a con, or how to build a brand as a creative, or whether you should use Kickstarter or self-fund your panels. These are very, very specific panels that end up being less trafficked than just the breaking into comics panel, or
Right.
an insights on independent creators panel, which I have been on. But the people that are in there, have been in it for a little bit of time. So they end up asking much more pointed questions. And I think my audience is, they're not, how do I break into comics? They're people that have, and the people that we speak to are people who were like me when I was 29,
Right.
who have been doing it for a while, have hit a roadblock in one way or another, and need to figure out how to pivot and like make it work. But they've been doing the work. They may even have a book out. They may have 2 books out. They're
Right.
less how do I start this from the nascent stages, and more, okay, I have a little bit of information. Now, how do I actually take all of this work that I've been doing and all of these struggles I've been running up against, and how do I cut 2 years off that by getting some information from you?
Right. And see, and that's like, it's funny because I get the and it's a weird perception of our industry is that I get the constant like, man, you're doing it, you're making it, and I'm like, man, I'm not even to the side of the hilltop yet. Like I'm knocking on the door, but I'm not inside yet. I mean, I'm in the industry, I'm working for bigger companies, I'm doing that stuff. But what you just said is exactly where I feel like I'm at now, where I'm like, all right, well, I'm at a glass ceiling, where do I go? And for me, like a lot of people, if I say that to them, they're blown away by that. They're like, dude, you're doing like, 12 books a year. You're working for IDW on bigger projects. You just did Transformer stuff. But to me, it's like, I'm not where I want to be. And it's not even a financial thing. I'm just a milestone person. Like I set a goal, I reach it. I set a goal, I reach it. And now my goal is I need to find, like you were saying, I got to pivot. And that's what I've been doing now but that's for me, I'm a survivor, I guess. Like I will adapt to the situations. I think what you were saying is funny about the extinction thing, because for me, when I first started doing, like deciding like, all right, I'm gonna make comics a career, I left the music industry behind. I was doing very well there, but I was not happy. I was very, very unhappy. And what I decided to do was, all right, I'm gonna do this comic thing. And I met a lot of guys right off the bat at my first few cons, and we became friends. And I'd started this company because, like I said, I'd had a lot of people who I'd go to cons and I'd try to pick people's brains, and it was like no one would give me the information that felt pertinent. Like I'd be like, oh, well, where do you go to get your printing done? And they'd be like, oh, well, just send me what you got and we'll talk to you about it. Like, why do I have to send you my work for printing? Like, I'm just curious who you print with, things like that. And it was one of those frustrations. But when I look back now, and it's not a knock on those guys, I love a lot of these guys, I still talk to them, but I've left them all behind. Like they're all stuck in like pre-production of books that they were working on when I met them. And now, we're here and they still haven't put that book out. In the meantime, I've got like 70 books out, in the last 7 years. So to me, it's insane. I guess like for me, like it became like, this is my job. This is my everything. I put 8 hours plus a day in, which is a total lie. I put way more than that in, but you know what I mean? And then I talk to these guys and they're like, oh, I just don't have time. And then I see like Facebook like posts of like, oh, this new video game came out, I'm playing this today. And I'm like, well, that's probably why you're not getting the work you want to get. So my initial, like my thing about the extinction point is it's funny because I've never thought, it's fun to have a word for it, I guess, like a phrase for it. Because I've always wondered about that, where these guys hit a point where there's like this wall, and I never have gotten that, because a lot of the guys I meet, they are passionate, but it's like they hit a wall, and instead of climbing over it or going through it or around it, they just stop. They just set up camp and they start playing their video games. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's why things get easier as you get older, and the longer you go in a career. It is because you get better. Don't get me wrong, but it's because you develop skills and people fall off. Like at 22. Everybody wants to be a screenwriter or a writer or an artist. At 32, a lot of people have decided that they'd rather be teachers or, mechanics, and there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with, pivoting and taking the stable route. But there are less people at 34 who are qualified, who've done it now. I've been writing and putting books together for a decade. And there's very few people now who can put together an anthology with with a bunch of other people that are all qualified to do the job. And as you grow, like, it's sort of, everyone's disparate around the world. But as you get to a certain level of talent and you're working, there are less people that achieve that level of talent. Not because everyone's not talented at the beginning, just because these people at the beginning haven't worked to do it. So it's easier to sort of gravitate towards people across a country or across a world like me and you than it was back when we were all 22 and everybody wanted to make a comic, and you didn't really know. Like, everyone had the passion to make the comic, everyone looked like they had the talent, but it's not until you get past that extinction point and look back and say, oh, there's only like 1% of all of those people that said they wanted to do a thing who are actually crazy enough to do that thing. And now, like, these all people that are crazy are the same kind of crazy as me. So, like, if you've done a book and you're like you're like X age and you've done something, like, I don't even have to know that much about you to know that, like, we should be friends, because we have a very, very special set of life skills that and personality traits that are kind of common around people that are crazy enough to keep doing an artistic thing way past any rational human being would have stopped and gotten a normal job.
It's funny because I have friends that literally quit because it wasn't happening fast enough. And I won't say names because I love the person, but it really irritated me. And he knows, like, I vented to him, like, yeah, that comment really irritated me. But he decided he wanted to make comics. Like, this was his thing. Like, he's a phenomenal artist. He's amazing. Like, I'm so envious of his skills. And it's like, he's right there, man. He's right there at that line of, like, I'm going to go in it and I'm going to do it or I'm not. And he's done a lot of work with me. Like I said, I won't say who it is, but he literally, like, has been trying for a while. And then this, like, past summer, he was like, let's do this. I'm going to do that. I'm not going back to my teaching job. I'm going to dedicate my time to art and making comics, and we're going to do this. And I'm like, all right, well, this is not going to be easy, but, you want to do it, I'll help you. And started lining up jobs and stuff. And we did it for 3 months, and he quit. And he was like, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I have to go get my job back because it's not happening fast enough for me. And that really irritated me, not because, he like, in more the concept of, he really felt like 3 months would be enough. Like, he literally stated, like, I thought we'd be making, this much money at this point in time. And I'm like, dude, this is 3 months of work here. Like, I'm 7 years and I'm paying my bills with comics full time, but I still have to do odd jobs like graphic design and pre-press and formatting and yada, yada, yada. And just stuff I don't even like doing to make ends meet, because sometimes the comic checks aren't coming in. And I'm like, so the fact that you would think you could just walk in the door 3 months in, you're already working at, Marvel or DC and making Greg Capullo money, that's just silly. And it's one of those things for me where I feel like there is this misconception. I'll tell people sometimes, they'll be like, how much do you make as a comic creator? And I'm like, well, you want like a generalized statement of like how much someone can make or how much I personally make? And people don't like that. They I guess, like, they get annoyed by that. They're like, well, I just meant, like, in general. Like, why would I give you false hope that you're going to make $800 a page because you're not working on Batman at Marvel and you're not a superstar artist who's contracted with DC, or, you know what I mean? Like, these different things. It's just like, these guys don't, there's this big disconnect.
Yeah,
that I'm finding.
What's interesting is I was a sales manager and a corporate trainer before I went off on my own and left my last job. And we always would tell you that the things that you do are, one, predicated. Your success today is predicated on what you did 6 weeks ago.
Right.
So if you do a bunch of stuff today, nothing will come about it for 6 weeks. Now, you might get a big deal, maybe, in that time frame, but the work you do is predicated on 6 months, on 6 weeks from now. So you might have, what happens with salespeople is they generally have a really big paycheck and then they just stop working, and then 2 paychecks later it's terrible. And it's because, that paycheck came from them hustling their butt off when they had no money, and then when they got the money, they took their foot off the gas, and then 2 months later they had a terrible month, so they put their foot on the gas. So the first thing is that what you do today is predicated on 6 months from now. 6 weeks from now. So what you do today is predicated on 6 weeks from now. The second thing is that compounds. So just like compounding interest, those first year or first 2 years or first 3 years or first 5 years, putting a penny in does not do much. But year 6, year 7, year 10, year 15, year 20, that penny becomes $1, that dollar becomes $20, that $20 becomes $1,000, that $1,000 becomes $10,000. And it's the same way with your career. You spend a lot of time, at least I spent a lot of time, doing a lot of work and getting literally nowhere. Years, not months, not days, years building books and then going to sell books and then meeting people and looking at other people envious and saying, when is that going to happen for me? But still going and still doing the work as hard and as fast and as well as I could for years before anything broke. And then when it started breaking and things started happening and people started asking me to be on panels, and we had a couple successful Kickstarters and books, and people were buying our books at shows, and I started meeting more influential people. That sort of had an exponential curve in the past year or so. In fact, month by month in this past year, I feel like it's been exponential every month since maybe June. But that exponential curve came from years, a decade of building up steam and going nowhere. And that's
right.
When I hear when you say the 10-year overnight success, I've always wondered why that was the case. And not that I am successful now, but I can at least sort of pick out why it takes 10 years to be a success more than I could before.
Well, there's a saying. Sorry, it's because you said that it's relevant to that. So, one of the things that I used to do, I used to be for 13 years actually, while I was doing the music industry, I was also I used to promote professional wrestling shows, and I was part of the independent professional wrestling scene very heavily. And there's this saying that I was taught when I was getting trained. And I got trained at the Blackjack Mulligan School. I was one of the last students to ever be trained there before he closed the school up. And one of the lessons they teach you is that after 10 years of being in that industry, if you're in there for 10 years and you still haven't made any money, you should probably get out. And I've applied that to other industries where I've watched it happen, where 10 years is definitely the year that you kind of either you make it or break it, I feel like, where you're like, all right, well, and it's weird because I've been going to comic conventions since I was in high school. So it's weird that I can look at guys that I've seen for 20 years who have the same exact concept pieces on their tables going, yeah, this is my new book. And they have 8 pages and it's the same guy. And I've seen him and I see him at these cons and he says hi to me and I'm like hi to him and I'm cordial. But I've watched myself in 7 years surpass this guy who's been doing it now for 27 years. And it's weird to me where it's like, how do you not realize that? How do you not see that? So what you were saying there, it's definitely something that I think crosses barriers in a lot of entertainment industries. Same thing with music. You'll see guys that are touring bands and stuff that are literally playing everywhere they can for 10 years and they're just not getting that deal. And I think that it comes back to what I was saying originally. I tell people all the time is that sometimes you're just not cut out for this. And the reason that I say that isn't that to discourage, but it's actually more to, I think the actual problem for creative people is the mentality to say, what I'm doing is not working, and swallow their pride and ego and change it. I think that's really what, one of the biggest things that you could teach anybody is the ability to adapt to the situations and stuff.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true, but I don't know if I agree that anybody's not cut out to do a thing. I think the problem more relies on that their desire to do that thing is not congruent with the amount of work they're willing to put forth to do that thing well.
Right.
I think that anybody can be a successful writer, maybe not a successful musician. I mean, there are certain dexterity things that you need to actually have, but for the most part, I think if you want to do a thing, you can do that thing. The question is, do you have the drive, determination, and passion to become the best in the world in that thing? You may not hit best in the world. So I think that, most people say they have a book in them. 50% of the world says they have a book in them. It's actually 51%. But that's 242 million people in this country that say they have a book in them.
Right.
Of that, 242 million adults, 121 million people say they have a book in them, of which Amazon publishes roughly 1 million books a year, which is a huge amount of books, but there's 121 million adults in the world, and so that's less than 1% of them actually do the thing. And now most of those books are garbage because they don't hire editors, or they just wanted to write a first draft, or they just wanted to hear the lovey-dovey things. They didn't try to get good. I fully believe that the key to getting good at something is doing it a lot, but most importantly is finishing it. It's in that last 10% of finishing something.
Yep.
Where the beauty all comes from, where you actually separate yourself from everybody else.
It's crazy, man. Like, for me, that drive to finish something is what pushes me on every project. And I see these guys that are still toying with the same idea. Like I said, 20 years, 20 plus years. They're still same 8 pages of content I've seen since I went to shows when I was, 15 years old. And it's crazy to me. And I'm like, just because you put a new fancy cover on it doesn't change that you're still hung up on a project that you're never finishing. And for me, it's like a good example for me is Joshua Black was the worst idea that I ever had. And everyone I say some panels and people scoff because it's my most popular creator-owned project. Well, my daughter's book Fetch is probably the most popular one now, but for a long time, Joshua Black's what got me most of my pro work. It got me in the door a lot of places, and it built my fan base. And that book was the biggest headache, and it still is, it's still coming out. And it wasn't until I'd met Jeremy Hobbs, and it goes back to like that whole finding people with the same mentality to work with. I tell people all the time that when you meet someone, just because they can draw well, or just because they can, write well, or they can ink, or whatever have you that you need in the situation of building your book, that doesn't mean that they're the right person for you, because it's like a relationship. It's like a marriage.
Yeah,
and you have to make sure that there's compatibility there. And when I first got in, because I didn't really know what I was doing, I tried drawing Joshua Black myself. The first issue that came out, I did a 50 copy run. And it was at Tampa Bay Comic-Con. It's a black and white version. Really funny side tangent. I found one in a back issue box recently in a Tampa store. Blew my mind. I haven't seen those. I have one copy hanging on my wall. But I rebooted the whole series with JT Hurst, and we did a Kickstarter. And that's where Joshua Black kind of broke into the world. Most people never saw that original, version of it. And with JT, it's just his work ethic was different than mine, and he's a fantastic artist, but it was taking him, 3 months to do 5 pages, and it was killing me. It was driving me insane. And it was one of those things where I was like, oh my God. And the other part of this that I always tell people too is the starting in short form. I think people need to learn to write short form and create short form and draw short form stories, because it's the gateway to larger projects, and it's a gateway to teach yourself how to do better things. It's one of those things for me with Joshua Black, though, was that I started with this book, and I had like a bunch of ideas, and I was like, which one should I start with? And then I'm like, what makes sense is I'll start with the big epic story that has 50 issues planned and all this craziness. It was the worst idea I ever had, because I'm still pushing to finish that series. Now, granted, I became very lucky at a time that I was completely disenfranchised with the book, and I just wanted it to be over. I found a shortcut to end it. A lot of people don't know that you're actually getting the exclusive on this one. I was going to end the book at issue 12. Jeremy Hobbs had come on to the book at issue 5 and was like, hey, basically like I had put an artist call out, and it goes back to that finishing. Even though everything had fallen apart with that book, and I hadn't touched it in almost a year at that point. I was so far behind. Tons of scripts written, but I was so far behind on it. I couldn't just not finish it. I had to finish it, even though I was working on, at the time I was working on Star Mage at IDW, and I was doing, I think I was working on Carpe Noctem at Hashtag and a couple other books. I had to finish that book. It was my first book, but at the same time, there's all these other elements, and it's like you were saying, it's that drive. And Jeremy was like, oh, I saw you were looking for artists, and I didn't like it's a really funny thing. I didn't like his samples at all. And I wasn't going to go with him. I had picked another guy. And then Larry Watts and D Fish and several other comic people that I'm friends with knew Jeremy, and they're like, dude, go with him. He's really good. Give him another chance. So he did some more pages for me, and I loved them, and I hired him. But at the same time, I was so disenfranchised with the book, I wasn't paying attention to what he was doing. And meanwhile, he's just pumping out pages. So one day, D asked me, because, we all work in the same studio, so D had been looking on the server and saw the pages uploaded and was like, have you seen the new Joshua, or those new Joshua Black pages are amazing. And I'm like, what new Joshua Black page? I'd totally forgotten that I was paying this kid. And I went and looked at them, and it blew my mind. And then when we hired Aloja Tomic to color, the two of them coming together, man, it created like this Voltron of amazingness for me. And over the course of this year, they made me fall back in love with my own book. And we finally, like, they've convinced me now that we should do the next arc that I was not going to do. I was going to end the book at the end of this arc that we're doing now. And they convinced me to keep going. So at the very least, Joshua Black's getting another arc, and it's because of that determination to finish something. And then for me to be even this, and the reason I'm saying this is because the disenfranchisement and the discouragement, the self, criticisms and all of those feelings that everyone has out there as creators. I think that some people don't realize that guys like you and I, we get that. I get it all the time where I'm like, oh my God, why am I doing this to myself? But even a situation where I was at the end of my rope with a project that I loved at one time, that I had grown to I just wanted it to end so badly. And now I'm full circle, and we're talking Kickstarters, and we've got, all these short stories coming in from like Tony Bedard and Bob Sally and Ruben Ramiro and all these guys that are fans of the book that, that I admire as well in our industry, that want to work on something with the book. And then I've had a consistent art team for 4 issues, which in the independent scene is actually pretty rare sometimes. And for me, it was the first 3 issues of that series were the hardest issues to ever get done. And if you go look back at like the credits, there's like 6 different artists working on different things. So it's one of those things for me. It's that determination. I know I'm rambling. I'm sorry, but
it's all right, man. Yeah. This is what this episode's about, I guess. Rambling about things. Yeah. I was just rambling for like 5 minutes previously, but yeah. People always ask me, how do you find artists? A lot of people since. You must get this too as a publisher.
All the time.
They always ask, how can I work for you? And my answer is always the same. It's every time. Well, while I used to go look for artists, now I'm friends with all the artists I want to work with. And the list of people I want to work with is way more than the list of people that I will ever work with in my entire career.
Oh, yeah.
So the only way that I really find artists now to work on my own personal projects is I'm friends with them on Facebook or Twitter. Usually it's Facebook because Facebook's where I hang out most of the time. And I see them doing a thing, and I like that thing, and then it triggers something inside of me, and I go, dude, I think that would be cool. And then I kind of percolate on it until I see them having completed a bunch of work. And then and we're actually friends, like not introducing them in that sort of, way and then trying to get them to work on your book, but like actually like we are resonating on that same frequency of weird, and then like we do a book. But
exactly.
One of the best ways to do that is on these small projects. I'm doing an anthology right now called Monsters and Other Scary Stuff or Shit or Things or something. Monsters and Other Scary and then another word.
Okay.
And we've got 30 different creators that are working on it, and a lot of them came and told me that like they did this small project. And now they want to do like a whole book on it. And in fact, my artist for my piece, which is called Go Fish, which is about a monster and a princess who are friends, and they're playing Go Fish together, and knights keep coming and trying to kill the monster, and they can't get it through their head that the monster can be friends with the princess. And that spawned me and my artist talking about maybe doing a book together. But these small projects can definitely, spawn something bigger. But more importantly, man, that fit is so important. I was very lucky at the beginning of my career where I am anal retentive about who I hire. Coming from movies and television and, making my own making my own movies and shorts and web series, man, I knew how important it was to find the right person. So I would spend months testing people, finding the right person, and then just hoping and praying that they actually did the pages. And luckily, the first 3 of our graphic novels, the artist stayed through the whole time. Now, the artist for Katrina wasn't able to continue to ink in color because he kept getting bigger and bigger jobs. But, he still penciled. And he still oversaw everything else. So,
right.
It is so important at the beginning to not rush a project. It's hard. It's so hard at the beginning because you want to rush a project. You're so excited for it. But that project is something you're only going to make one time. You're only going to make it once, especially for me who mostly makes graphic novels. I've never done a long form series like Joshua Black or anything else. For me, I'm making that project for a year, maybe 2 years. But my goal is to sell that MFer forever. Forever. Yeah. I want my nieces, nephews, their grandchildren, everybody. I want to be able to I want to look up in 100 years and say, wow, they're still making money off it. Maybe not a huge amount of money, but they can still go back and reprint this thing today if they needed some money and make some money from it.
Yeah, it's a really cool. It's a really cool thing when you go to like certain, like if you're out of state for something like a con or whatever, but you happen to hit like a local Books A Million or whatever. It's one of the coolest feelings for me. And people don't realize because I'm a sponge basically. Like I sponge off everyone when it comes to like knowledge sponge. I should have started that because sponge is usually negative connotation. But yeah, anyway, like I usually will like if I'll pick people's brains like crazy. One of my first experiences was George Perez was doing this raffle, and it was for you won if you won the raffle, then you would get a sketch from him, but you had to pay $200 to the Heroes Initiative. And I entered it and I won. And so when I sat down with him, he was like, all right, what do you want? Because you got to sit there and talk to him while I did it. And I was like, I don't care. Batman, I guess. And then I just started to ask him questions. I had his notebook. And afterwards, George was like, I've never had anyone do that. That was really cool. And I was like, well, this is just the thing, like for me. And I get that from music, my time in music and wrestling, is that you're supposed to pick the brains of the veterans that have been successful before you. It's the mentality. The problem I find with the comic industry, especially, is because there's a lot of artists and the creative types, is there's a lot of pretentious ego there where people almost feel like there's bitterness or even insecurities that kind of come up where they're kind of worried about that. But what I always laugh at is, for me, and back to my original point, was that I've only been doing this now officially as a pro for about 5 years. I've been doing it for 7, but 5 years working consistently, yada yada. And one of the things that I always laugh about that is it's because I've become so knowledgeable, and I spend every waking hour on this. And to kind of call back to something you were talking about, that whole is it 6 weeks you were saying you pay off in 6 weeks. Right after MegaCon Tampa, I decided for the first time in 5 years to take a break. I just needed 2 weeks or a week or whatever. And I took 2 weeks of just like kind of working on stuff, kind of chilling. And this month has been a giant pain because I'm trying to catch up on work now. I'm trying to make sure I can cover bills and do that kind of stuff. And it's just funny about that callback. But what I was saying originally about going to other towns is, if you go in like a Books A Million or even a library or something and you see a book like that your name is on, as a comic fan my entire life, it is the most insanely cool thing. And sometimes I find myself just standing there hoping that I'll see someone walk through and flip through it just so I can initiate a conversation. But not like I'm standing around Books a Million waiting for that to happen, but you think about it where you're like, man, this is cool. And to me, like, that's the payoff. Like your work is everywhere. Your voice is everywhere. Like the carrying of the voice is everywhere. And it's just a crazy, surreal feeling, you know, like you were saying earlier about getting put on panels for the first time. And like, have you been getting invited to cons yet? Like where you're a guest, like a pro guest?
No, but I'm sure hopeful that that's happening. Tyler, I just did a 2-parter with Tyler a couple of days ago. That's going to launch right before this episode probably. And that was one of my goals for next year, is to start coming out and like guesting at shows. But my whole I don't have IDW credits. I don't have even like John's comic credits. I only have Wannabe Press credits. Like, this is all me building it from scratch with no other credits. So it's a lot harder for me to get invited to cons because, you know, I don't get to email somebody and say IDW on it. Like, they don't see IDW or Dark Horse or Boom or Marvel or DC.
Do you want to know the big secret to that? I can tell you that how you do it. It's really funny, actually.
Yeah, yes, please, let's do that. That would be amazing.
Here's an educational moment for you here. It really doesn't matter about the publisher as long as they're recognized. If you've been published through any recognized distributor, Diamond or Comixology being the two main and major ones. What this is it calls back to two websites, Comic Vine and the Comic Book Database. If your name appears on either of those websites for a certain number of art or writing credits, those are two important things to remember. Art is considered pencils, inks, or colors. Unfortunately, letterers, there's not really much here for you. But if you have one of those type of credits present within 2 years, most convention organizers, comic book, because they have different organizers for different cons. If they're a bigger show, they will pull those up. They'll look it over and they'll say, all right, this guy's had 6 credits in the last 2 years. Yeah, we haven't ever had him. We'll bring him in. It kind of works like that. So as long as your books are being distributed somewhere, you should be relatively fine in that aspect when you submit for pro passes.
Yeah. So do you submit for pro passes and then email them and say, do you want to be a guest? Do you want me as a guest? Like, how does that work?
If you submit for a pro pass, they'll usually send you a thing about, do you want to sign up for a pro table? And you can. And then from there, they will view your stuff and they'll look over your Google. Basically, they'll just Google you. And if your footprint is, I guess, within what they're looking for, if you will, or whatever, then you're golden.
Yeah, I just pay for those bad. So the thing is, I just pay for all these bad boys. I do it at 47 cons this year, and I've paid for. Well, I haven't paid for all of them because sometimes I just went as a guest, but at least 30 cons this year, and I paid for all of them, every single one of them, like out of my pocket. And that's okay for now because that's me paying my dues. Like, that's paying my dues for going to shows and getting booked. That's how I've been booked and moderated, a couple dozen panels this year. And my whole thing is I want to build the brand of me, Russell Nolte, and Wannabe Press, so that when I email somebody in Florida, because that's coming, my friend says that's the circuit to get on, the Florida circuit. They're going to say,
I don't agree at all.
they're going to say, yeah, of course, you've got X amount of followers, your clout score is Y, you have all of these books that are done. Because I also do novels, so I do novels, and I don't do any art. I did one book that I drew and wrote, but mostly 99% is I'm a writer, and so I write novels and graphic novels, sometimes kids books. So my distributor is Ingram, not Diamond or any of those other things. But
if you have a legitimate like a what's it called, like a HarperCollins kind of thing, you should also still be eligible if they can find anything that links back to you having actual widespread distribution. A couple things real quick I want to talk to you about real quick because you mentioned it there. Number one, the writer thing is funny. I'm really, it's always cool to see someone who has made it as far as you have as a writer. I had to change. I had to adapt. Like I said, I always get told I'm a great writer. I get great reviews consistently, but I wasn't making the kind of money I needed to pay my bills and take care of 4 kids by myself with as a writer. So I had always had artistic and, ability. And so what I did was I actually just applied that, and I became, this is one of the reasons why I do things like I make comics, my comics website and stuff, is because I had to learn everything so that I felt, I guess so that I could become indispensable to some companies. Like right now I do pre-press for, and I won't say their names because I can get in trouble for some of them, but I do pre-press for a good 15 different publishers right now, like comic publishers. Some of them are very large top 10 guys, and some of them are just small publishers. So I actually went out and I learned everything. And other person I've ever met who took the same route I did was Amy Chu, which was...
Oh, yeah, I love Amy. I hung out with her down in San Diego a few months ago.
Yeah, and Amy Chu and I were on, the Breaking into Comics panel at MegaCon Orlando together. And Amy, I didn't jump in and be like, oh, I did that too, because, she kind of went over it already, but she was talking about how she did the same stuff that I did. The only difference between me and Amy Chu is I don't have the backing and the budget, I guess, that she had when she first started to be able to afford to hit every major con. And I think that might be the difference in our careers, because Amy and I, it's funny story. We started on the same time frame of doing this. Whenever we both started putting our real work in. Amy actually had come up and introduced herself to me at MegaCon Orlando in 2011, I think it was, because we had talked on Twitter a lot. And it's really cool to see where she's at now. I mean, she's blowing up. But when you hear her talk about how she did it, it makes so much sense to me. And what it was that she would do what I did with that George Perez thing. She would position herself to go to these dinners with Joe Quesada and then be like, hey, will you look at my comic? And she'd have this comic, this short story comic that's this already pressed, ready to go, that he could just slide in his pocket or whatever. Little tiny 6x9 comic. And she would do that. And that's kind of how it went. So for me, I didn't just go the writer route, but when people ask me, I say I'm a comic creator because I hate, and it's really funny probably, but I hate being lumped into that one thing of, oh, well, you're an inker. Because most of my pro work this day and age right now is inking. And it's sad to me because I was originally got hired at IDW writing, and now I'm inking something. And I was, and now I'm inking some things at DC, and I'm inking some things over here and over there. And I want to write. I'm a writer. And it's one of those things of be careful with that. I tell people all the time, be careful with that shift. Now, hopefully I'll continue to be able to grow in the inking, department so that one day maybe I'll have the opportunity to pitch as a writer. But that's why I keep creating more stuff independently, because I'm just not getting the opportunities I want professionally as a writer. And it's just funny, the difference in the roads we took. The second thing though is someone said Florida was the scene to be in. I don't know who said that. I don't know if they live here.
Well, they'll pay out it's the circuit because they'll actually pay you to come out there, without. This is my thing. I live in Florida. And I get paid to go to a lot of cons. I went to, it was 23 cons here in the state alone this year, which is so oversaturated. And these guys kept paying me to come out. And I can tell you right now, and this is such a controversial statement. I know it is. The con scene here I actually don't hate. I think there's way too many cons. But most of the promoters I can think of, with the exception of Mike Broder, who I can't stand, and I said that because he knows that publicly. I don't care. But the entire group of promoters here in Florida, they're all pretty cool. They're all pretty cool guys. They have this weird thing where if you go to there, I don't like the fact you went in that show and I'm on this show, and it's almost like you don't pay me enough to come to your show to not do the other show. But it's one of those things. But I will say that the comic scene here is so backwards to me.
The comic scene that I've seen that's booming, that I'm like kind of wanting to move there and be a part of, is the Midwest. Like, it's weird, man. I don't feel like comic fans in Florida buy comic books. Like, it sounds weird, but I don't feel like everyone here buys comics, which is really weird because at MegaCon Orlando, they did a spotlight panel on me, and I was surprised that there was like 300 some people in there. I started the panel off with like, you guys know the Frank Miller joke is like, or the Frank Miller panel is the next panel or whatever, like in the next hall, and everyone laughed, but they were all there for me, and I actually called them out. I called a whole room of people out because I was like, so who all in here is in here because they read Joshua Black? And like a ton of people raised their hands, and I was like, all right, well, you guys all owe me money now. Like, you guys pirating? Like, what's going on here, And it's one of those things for me, like when I've seen the scene here in Florida, now maybe it's oversaturated. Maybe I've oversaturated myself by doing so many shows, but I don't see the same thing as when I look at what's going on in the Midwest with Dirk Manning and
Yeah, man, but you know that you're seeing the best part of those two. I mean, no con scene is great. Anyone can have a really good, excellent like 3 seconds on Twitter. You don't know, so I'm like, the grass is always greener. I look at what Dirk's schedule is like, and what like other people in the Midwest and like Columbus are like, and like Jeff Smith and Tom and all the people in like Columbus are doing, and all the people. I remember thinking that when I was in LA, oh my God, look at all this awesome stuff that's happening in LA before I was exhibiting, and I still think that about LA, and a lot of people are sort of down on the scene in LA and on the West Coast, but like, I don't know, I'm not in there. I need to get some hookup to get down there a couple of times, and maybe I can let you know.
Yeah, I think coming to Florida for you is going to be great for you because it's a whole new market for you. And I think that's my point with like the thing up there. I'm talking, I'm trying not to put names out there and blast people, but the actual comic scene, like the people making comics here in Florida, there are like for every 5 really good, awesome people, there's like this whole group of people that are just like, they're just bitter, angry, upset people who are so like ridiculous with statements. And I'm not going to drop names, but like I've literally been told by people that they should be the only, like this one guy told me one time that his company should be the only company presenting comic book panels and independent comic stuff, yada yada, at the Florida cons because they're the only ones that do it right. And I'm just like, wow, man, like that's a bold, arrogant statement to be making in a community that we should be trying to unite and work together. You'd be surprised. Now, mind you, obviously I'm going to be looking at my environment and what I see, and you're completely right. But I know that the handful of shows I've done in the Midwest in the last 2 years have been the most successful and most, I guess you say, vibrant. Like they just felt awesome. The people seemed really, really sincere. They seemed really interested. The community itself, the comic book community itself, felt very united. They felt very much like they cared about one another and they wanted to be friends with each other. And it's not that I'm really, and I have this comment I make all the time that I didn't get in this to make friends, but it's nice to have them. And it's one of those things of, it feels like there's not a lot. I mean, every community there's going to be backbiting and weird drama, but it didn't really feel like that was being displayed. It felt like everyone got along pretty well. And
yeah, I don't know. I have to do some Midwest shows. I'll do some Southeast shows, and I'll see. I know that the community in Los Angeles and in Southern California is. Well, the thing that I love about the Southern California community is, yeah, there's all that stuff that happens too, but I don't deal with that. Like, I don't even know if it's happening because if somebody is like that, I just literally don't talk to them. Like,
right,
it's done. But one thing that I will say about LA and Southern California, and California in general, but really LA specifically, it's the only place that I've ever lived or been to where people don't when you say you work in comics or you're a publisher, they don't ask you, yeah, but what do you actually do?
Yeah, that's a nice sounding thing to have, actually.
It's great. I mean, in fact, if you say you're an accountant or something else, usually the response is, yeah, but what do you actually want to do?
That's
as
funny.
Opposed to like, which is it leads to a community. And I think if we want to talk about a community for a second, I think that that's one of the most important pieces of like building the community, because there is that criticism everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. And, most people are going to hate the thing you do. Sorry, Martin. Most people are either going to hate or not like, or like be ambivalent to the thing that you do. Me too. Not just you, me, Stephen
I'm
King.
aware.
Like, most people are going to be ambivalent. And to me, my entire career has been about tuning out those people and focusing on the 10%. So let's say 10% will like you, 10% will hate you, and 80% will be at best lukewarm by you.
Right.
My entire career has been about tuning out the 10% that hate me, embracing the 10% that like me, and convincing, 5% more of those people who are ambivalent to not be ambivalent about me anymore. And just moving that needle ever so slightly so that, instead of there being 80% of people who are ambivalent at me, 75% are.
See, it's funny. There's two things to add to that. First of all, what you were saying is actually, I live by two philosophies. One of them is Kevin Smith has this whole thing about why not. I'm sure you've probably heard it at least once or seen it posted online. But it's this whole thing of surround yourself with why not people. And that's me. Like, that is how I feel about things. You'll meet people in your life that whenever you say, I want to go make a movie, or I want to make a comic, or I want to do a podcast, or I want to do whatever, they'll say, well, why do you want to do that? That's stupid. Go get a job. Why would you do that? And his point was, get away from those people and surround yourself with the people who go, oh, that's cool. Why not? You want some help? What can I do to help you? Like, those are the people you should surround yourself with. And I totally agree with that. The second part of that for me, though, is so starting in January, I've never been big on New Year's resolutions ever. But this past January, my fiance convinced me to try. And so I adopted this thing called PMA. Are you familiar with the acronym PMA?
Nope.
It means positive mental attitude. So I'm a very cynical person. I'm sure you can tell the way I talk, the way that I approach things. I'm a very direct, no filter, cynical person. And the PMA lifestyle at first was a huge, it made me laugh. I was like, this is not gonna, whatever, okay, whatever, but I'll try it. And I like anything I do, I put my best into it. And I have to tell you, man, this year has changed me so much with this philosophy. And the whole point of the philosophy is not about optimism. Everyone mistakes this concept as being optimistic, and it's not. What it is it's looking for the positive in every situation. No matter how negative the situation is, no matter how badly it plays out, it's looking for that. And it's not being delusional either, because you look for something that's real. You don't just go, oh, well, blah, 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 make it up. You look for the positive. So for me, you were talking about keeping away from those people. I don't associate with these people whatsoever. Most of them either don't like me or they, it's whatever, but they without fail will come up to me at cons and say hi and try to talk to me. And I'm cordial. But the thing is I like to look at this in the sense of, I'm glad that I know they're that way, because then, just like you were saying, I don't have to work with them. I can choose to ignore that, opportunity, if you will, right, as it comes up.
Yeah, people say that there are these people in LA, and I'm not blind by them. It's almost like they don't exist to me, because if we're not driving down the same lane, man, you just get off the, you don't even need to be on the road.
Exactly.
So I had a similar experience last year at Los Angeles Comic-Con. I'm a very cynical and negative human being too, and I got in a fight with my table mate. Because of something really stupid. It was supposed to be my last show of the year, and I was away from my table, and he opened up another box of comics. That's literally what happened. It was the most ridiculous fight I've ever been in, and I blew up at him when I came back to my table while he was being interviewed by somebody. So it was bad. It was not Smiles time.
I've got this reputation in Florida of being like this bully or this crazy person, or I'm insane and I'll just punch people in the face because I come from the hip hop scene, and it's this really crazy stereotype that's been placed upon me that I actually don't like. I have friends that do podcasts and things, and they'll be like, "Oh, he's the wild man of Florida comics." I'm like, please don't say that. Don't call me the time bomb, or I'm not that person. I'm not just running around punching people in the face. When I first got in the comic industry, I came right from hip hop, and my sensibilities, my mentality, everything was way different back then. I hadn't acclimated, I guess, to the way that people were a little bit more passive aggressive in this industry and things. And so I did get in some people's faces and stuff. But this recent, and all these years of doing this now, this year was the first time I had a situation where it became a screaming thing in the middle of a con, on the con floor. And I won't say with who it was, but it was the first, and it makes me laugh because I've been doing this PMA thing. So it was the first time I ever went into a situation like this, where the situation came to me, if you will, and I didn't handle it the way I used to, where I'd freak out or just punch the guy in the face or what have you. I let him yell at me, and somehow it got turned around that, like, I started this whole thing. And it was all because I'd made a joke about this award ceremony that was happening. It was just like, oh, it was an award ceremony, whatever. And it wasn't like a joke at the award ceremony. It was just a funny factoid. And if you pay attention to what I'm talking about, you'll know exactly. It had to do with me, Dirk Manning, and something else. And I was like, that's funny if we lose to this situation. And the people who were associated with the other situation, they were so upset that they confronted me, and I didn't realize they were upset, and I apologized. And in the midst of apologizing, they just start screaming and cursing me out. And then the con promoter comes to me and was like, calm down. And I'm like, dude, I'm not even saying anything. And it was the most asinine thing ever. So yeah, like it's funny. Like, it's very funny. And that negativity though, and I say is, I didn't let it bother me. I literally went back to my hotel that night, and I just sort of like, all right, it's over. It's done with. I'm not going to deal with it. I'm not going to say anything about it publicly. Like I said, I wanted to say their names, let it go, whatever. And I actually have a point of education for listeners. If you're trying to get into the comic industry, no matter how where you come from, how stubborn you are, how aggressive you are, how whatever you feel that you have in that thing, there is nothing at all that comes from any sort of interaction with people in that way. In the hip hop scene, you get lauded for that. Like, people are like, oh yeah, you punched that dude in the face. But in the comic industry, you're probably never gonna get work. And it's one of those things I tell people all the time is, you don't have to be friends with everybody, but definitely try your best to control yourself.
I took the last. So to go back to my story for a second, since that argument, I really sat down and tried to figure out like how to make sure that never happens again. And we actually tabled together at WonderCon this past year. And this was like 6 months. So LA Comic Con is always on Halloween weekend, and WonderCon's always it used to always be on Easter weekend, but now it's right around Easter weekend. So it's roughly 6 months, almost exactly.
Right.
And so we were kind of nervous about tabling together. I frankly was nervous about tabling with somebody because like I had just blown up at this dude for no reason. And so I spent like literally the next 6 months intervening, trying to figure out how like to flip my mental attitude. And when we finally got to WonderCon, he's like, oh, you're like a completely different human being from where you were in October. I took a lot of pride in that because it's true. Like, having a positive mental attitude and trying to look at the positive of stuff, or just letting things roll off your back, is like, it's helping you. Like, getting pissed off about stuff or like looking at the negative, like that's a you problem. You know, I've started living my life with this philosophy of like, the karma that I put out, what I do is my karma. What comes back is your karma.
Right.
So like, I'm going to keep putting out good things, and if you don't take those good things, then guess what? Like, that is on you, not on me.
Yeah, it's funny too, because for me, like, MegaCon Tampa, and it's funny because it's the most recent large con I did. I just did Hall of Heroes and something else, but MegaCon Tampa is the most recent large one, and I see a lot of my friends from the bigger scene, because a lot of the pro con, like, people that I've become really good friends with, you don't see them as often because we're all working, we all live in different places, whatever. But I saw a lot of these guys at MegaCon Orlando, and MegaCon Orlando was May. So we're talking from May until October. everyone, it was the most ridiculous thing, man. Every single person was like, dude, you seem different. You seem much happier. Like, I don't think I've ever seen you seem so just chill and happy. And it was nice to hear that as opposed to, are you cool? Are you all right? Are you mad? What's wrong? And it wasn't that I walked around like a scowl on my face or anything. It's just, I guess it was the way I carried myself. And it's just one of those things. Like, it's funny, like, how simple, like, we're over here educating people about posture and being, like, decent people in comics. But you'd be surprised how far it goes. Neil Gaiman has a whole thing about that. It was, you know, the pie chart to comic book success, or any success really, was based around the concept that if you're not like easy to work with, if you're, you know, good attitude, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but you have to also have like a good work ethic, and you have to be able to be like prompt and all these different things. Those are all very, very important to success in the comic industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think in any business or freelancing industry, but creative types tend to overlook that one. But like, look, there are infinite. They're literally infinite. Martin, you and me go down tomorrow. 50 people as talented could take my place.
Oh yeah,
it's like. It's not about it's a little about the talent. It's a lot about whether you can deliver on time, but it's mostly about whether you're pleasant to work with and you're trusted, and they can trust you with doing something. And part of that is being nice, part of that is being on time, and part of that is being talented. But man, the path to success is littered, bodies stacked 100 miles high of really talented assholes.
Yeah, it's true. It is true.
Look at how many people you can look at and be like, well, he's not the most talented, but man, he's really nice to work with. And I would rather have that guy who may be slightly less talented, but on time and nice to work with, than this guy who's super talented but impossible to work with.
Yeah, that's the other thing. You can't be super talented, an asshole, and late. Like, I think people forget that too, where it's like, hey, you got one or the other here. You can't really, like, and that's the thing. You can be super, super, you know, polite and awesome and easy to work with, have great talent, and be late. People don't realize that. You can be slow and be a graphic novelist if you have to, or whatever you want to call it, however you want to call that, long form. But that pie chart is something I always refer to people all the time. I'm like, well, look at that and see where you fit into that category.
I think that pie chart is super accurate. I mean, it is accurate, but like, there's this saying, you can either be nice, on time, or talented, and you have to have at least two. But I totally don't believe that. I believe you have to have all three, because in this day and age, like 10 years ago, you could be an undercover asshole. You could not be on social media. You could be sitting in your hole. You could not go to that many cons. Be really talented and be on time and be just a jerk to work with, and nobody would know. Today, it ain't that way. Today, you have to be nice. You have to be on time. You have to be super talented, or there will be somebody to take your place. And plus, just like being nice is just a thing you should do. Like, you should just be a nice person. Like, that's just that's not even a barrier to entry to success in life. It's just to be a human being, you should be nice.
Yeah, I've never understood people who actually take pride in being jerks, by the way. Yeah. Like, I'll make jokes sometimes with my fiance, like, oh yeah, I'm an asshole, whatever, but I'm just joking. But that's me and her privately. But there are guys out there that I know who literally take pride in the fact that they're kind of an asshole. Like, oh yeah, you know me, I'm an asshole. Like, wait, why is that like a point of pride? Like, I made a comic book on my own. I feel more prideful for that than
like,
the fact that I can be a jerk to somebody on the internet and laugh with my friends about it. Like, I've never understood that mentality, even back when I was around people who practiced that consistently.
Yeah, there are certain things you can be proud about. Like, I'm very, very proud that I've been married for a long time. I'm very, very proud that I don't have to have a real job. I'm very, very proud of the fact that, like, I have made things and it's made somebody happy enough to buy that thing from me. But I've never been happy making somebody feel bad about themselves. I've never been happy.
I don't understand that mentality at all.
I mean,
Um,
that's the thing about. I know we got to wrap up, but that's the thing
well,
about like resonating on this same level of weirdness of all the people past that point. Like, it's very hard for me to find somebody who's like done a whole book, at least now in this day and age, myself, who's come up in the last few years, that like is a jerk because like we all just want to make cool things and sell those cool things to cool people.
it's true, and that's the thing is like there is a level of amazing like, and this is the thing like I don't know if you saw my stuff. I had a new book come out yesterday, and I wrote a blog about like an introspective like look into why I wrote this story because it's like the most personal thing I ever wrote, and I talked about something in there, and it was that so I'm 14 years clean, a drug addict. And I talked about the fact that making comics, the euphoria that you can get from a completed project in your hand, like looking at it, to me is better than any high I ever had as an addict ever. And it's insane to me the level of people out there who never experienced that are within our industry, and it's all about that persistence and working forward on that. And I don't know, like it's just to me like that's the thing is like you can have these positive elements in the industry, and I think you're totally right about that. Like the whole concept of people who used to be able to just hide in their hole and not have social media there, not have cons, and not have, and now it has to be much different. It really does. Like that is something that definitely should be changed in that aspect of how you approach how you do business. Like it doesn't cost anything to just be polite and cordial with people. It really doesn't. You don't have to like people. I don't like most people, but
yeah, it also doesn't cost any money to treat somebody as a human being instead of a $20 bill. Like this is one of the big like what I hate is walking up to a table and somebody like looking at you and then making a decision you're not going to buy and then like going back and looking down at the thing. It's like this is somebody who's worked, well, I mean, the federal minimum wage is $7.25. So let's just say they worked 3 hours to get that $20. Like maybe like that's 3 hours of their hard earned life. And if you want to earn that, like you have to earn that. Like they're more than just that $20 bill. They're a human being who's done things, who's worked hard for it. That represents time, money, effort, and energy that they're not going to spend on something else that they've spent acquiring it. And they're giving, I mean, this is going to sound really corny. It's probably the corniest thing I'm going to say on this thing, but that's a piece of them. Like that's a piece, that $20 doesn't just represent money. It represents a piece of like their life that they're giving to you instead of buying food or going and getting Stan Lee to sign their thing or whatever it is. Like they're giving it to you. And like I always like try to impart to people that if you want to make more sales at cons, it's not that hard. It's treat people like they're humans instead of $20 bills, like engage with them, be nice, and have cool products. So that was Martin Dunn and me talking about making comics. Hope you enjoyed that episode. I know I sure did. If you did, let me know. Email me, russell@wannabepress.com, or head on over to iTunes and look up The Business of Art. Look up I Make Comics there and on YouTube. Find us on Twitter. I'm at Russell Nolte. He is MDunn82. Please, please, please rate, subscribe, and review both of our shows. It's the best way for us to find new people, know that we're touching our audience, and be able to find more people to help. More importantly, subscribing is the best way to make sure you don't miss any of our awesome content. And if you want to hear most of the back episodes of this show without the commercials, head on over to thebusinessofart.us/volume1 and pick up all of the hard lessons, ranterludes, and mini seasons that we did about Kickstarter for the first 100 episodes of our show. It's not the interviews, but it is everything else. 74 episodes, almost 9 hours of content, yours for just $20. And most importantly, no commercials. So head on over to thebusinessofart.us/volume1 and check it out today. And that's it, wannabes and creators. I will see you next time.